Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I am Zeckthar.
And I'm Yuksen.
We are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We have seen the rise and fall of many empires, yet this month we are taking leave of the grim world of Warhammer and taking a vacation.
Right you are, Zeckthar. This month we have traveled to the strange world of Terran 42, or what the locals call Earth. We landed near the city known as Seattle to take in the sights and food of the city. Yet while we are here, we will continue our walks.
Indeed, Yuksen. We will be taking a break from our normal historical chronicling. We figured we would let you, fine people of the galaxy, take a break as well, and discuss one of our favorite games, Dungeons and Dragons.
Quite right, brother. It is good to take a break away from the drudgery of life and simply play a fun game. Well, what are we going to discuss today?
Well, today we have a guest who will discuss with us his favorite characters to play in D&D. And his name is Secrona.
Thank you. Please, you're too kind.
Thanks for being here, Secrona.
It's my pleasure, Yuksen. I'm glad you two stopped by. I've been listening to your voxes and I've enjoyed them immensely. And when I got the call from Zeckthar that you two would be coming to Earth, I had to ask you to stop by. I never dreamed that I'd be a part of this vox.
You are too kind, Secrona. But tell me, how on earth did you actually get our voxes? You are in a completely different realm.
I know! But tell me, what will we be talking about today?
Well, we all like playing that wonderful Earth game known as D&D.
Yeah.
We would like to discuss with you your favorite characters you have played in D&D.
Yes, that is true. But unfortunately, Yuksen, I've been doing some digging. And, well, we have a few corrections this week.
I know, brother. I myself did some digging, and I'm afraid we have to walk back a few things.
Wait, really? You guys make mistakes? I thought y'all were supreme beings and didn't get things wrong.
Yes, well, we normally don't. But we have been around for a very long time.
70 million years.
Yes, and like I said, a long time. Do pardon us if we forget something every millennia or so.
Well, what did you guys get wrong?
The first thing was more of a slip of the tongue. We said Rogel Dorn's Legion was called the Iron Fist. That is incorrect.
Indeed, brother. What we meant to say was the Imperial Fists. The Iron Fists are actually a second founding chapter of the Iron Hands. It was, dare I say, simply misspoken.
Quite right, Zeckthar. Yet the second correction was a complete faux pas by myself. Adepta Sororitas, also known as the Sisters of Battle, are not part of the Inquisition. They are actually part of the Ecclesiarchy, although they do work hand in hand with the Ordo Hereticus.
Don't feel too bad, Yuksen. They do work with the Ordo Hereticus. And they're about as crazy as that sad lot. It could be far worse.
Like what?
Well, I've been rereading some of the chroniclings that we've done, and it turns out the White Scars are actually not big fans of the Space Wolves.
Really?
I'm afraid so. You see, because of their wild appearance, they get roped into the same thoughts as the Space Wolves. You know, as a backwards, barbaric chapter. This is very far from the truth, according to them. They see themselves as quite noble, and they do not like the fact of getting roped in with the barbaric wolves.
Interesting. But perhaps we could carry on as to why I'm here?
Oh, my apologies, Secrona. We don't get out much and tend to drawl on with each other because, well, there really isn't anybody else to talk to. Perhaps you could start at the top and tell us your favorite characters that you have played in that interesting game, D&D.
Well, I'm glad you asked. As a person who's played many forms of D&D, I've created quite a few favorite characters, such as Mitzi, the Spider Rogue. For everyone who doesn't know, there's many different games out there. They're essentially just D&D clones. One of them is called Pathfinder 2, and you can play a class that is a human spider hybrid. And what better way to take advantage of being able to crawl on walls than to be a rogue, where you can easily get behind people and deal wonderful things called sneak attack damage.
Real quick there, Secrona. Isn't Pathfinder the one that came out with before 5e?
I believe Pathfinder First Edition, I believe, came out. Essentially, Pathfinder First Edition is based off of D&D 3.5. Is that 3.5 or 3.75? And then they decided to change it drastically for second edition of Pathfinder, and that's the version that I've been playing more of.
But it's still a form of D&D.
It is. A lot of the same mechanics are still there. You know, you still got the same chart alignment, the same alignment. I mean, the same alignment chart, but also the same skill stats. You've got a lot of the same abilities. It's pretty much, if you play D&D, this isn't much different, and you could easily get into this, but there are some subtle differences, like instead of having, you know, oh, you've got one main action and you got a movement action, a bonus action. Essentially, it goes, okay, well, you've got 3 actions that you can do whatever you want. You can move. You can attack multiple times. You can cast certain spells, like a level 1 spell and then maybe a level a 2-action spell. It's got slightly different mechanics, but again, it's easy to get into if you've played D&D. Just like if you played Pathfinder first and then played D&D, it would still be the same thing. Easy translation.
Yeah, from what I've heard, one of the reasons why they moved on to 5th edition was because they actually smoothed out the mechanics from Pathfinder.
I think so. And then eventually, I think that's what led to Pathfinder eventually growing too, is because, again, as good as the mechanics were, they were outdated and need to be changed in order to keep up with the new way that things were being played. And that's why, again, you've got essentially, instead of playing, you know, oh, we want to go back to the old version of D&D, so we'll play Pathfinder. Now it's like, well, just play 5th edition or Pathfinder 2nd edition. Both those are really solid games.
So what made Mitzi one of your favorite characters to play? What kind of character was she?
Well, again, she was a rogue. She mostly she mostly stole things, which was always hilarious. Also creeping people out because not only could she be a human spider hybrid, but she could also just be a full spider if she wanted to. So that's how actually she ended up sleeping most of the time, which was always hilarious when people would see giant spiders in the middle of the night, try to call them out to security, and then it's just a person in the, like an alleyway. But also just the mechanics of being a rogue, especially when I initially made the character, there was another rogue, which essentially allowed us to double team people on each other's turns. And again, always being able to get sneak attack damage when someone is prone or just, you know, like facing the wrong direction is always a fun time. Essentially, it's a free crit.
That's called, I think, backstab, right?
There is sneak. I mean, it is essentially backstab, yes. But it doesn't just need to be like stab someone in the back. It could be if someone's in combat and you attack them from a different, any sort of different angle.
I was just saying, I think the move is actually called backstab. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be behind them. I just think that's actually what the move is called.
Yeah, no, just being for also, she was just kind of a prick to everyone, which I enjoy. Which again, I don't usually act like a complete jerk in real life, but being able to play a jerk in a game is always fun. It's kind of like I'm nice in real life, so this is my way of just kind of letting loose.
Okay. So we've got Mitzi the prick. Have you had any other interesting characters that you played?
I played another character whose name is Flint. That's actually a character I'm currently playing right now, who actually is from a completely different. It's again another D&D clone, but it's got way different mechanics where it's not actually a D20 based game. It's actually you have to actually essentially buy your skill slots as you move up, which allows you to use higher dice. And the way I built this guy is essentially just a straight up barbarian, where if you hit him, he gets enraged and deals essentially double damage. He does more damage. This is a post-apocalyptic world. And he's got a shotgun. The shotgun does about half damage compared to my guy when he gets hit.
Whoa, hang on. A shotgun? So what's so I'm assuming this is just a different role-playing game, correct?
It is, yes.
What's it called?
Savage Worlds.
Savage Worlds. Okay. That's one of the few I actually haven't heard of. But most, if I recall right, most role-playing games kind of have, like you said anyways, they pretty much have very similar mechanics.
They do borrow mechanics, yes.
So if you have played D&D, you can kind of play a lot of these other role-playing games. and kind of pick it up rather quickly.
Savage Worlds would take a little bit more. It took me a little more to get used to because the mechanics are different enough where it does feel like a completely different game. But again, if you played a role-playing game before, you'll pick it up fairly quickly.
Yeah, I believe there's actually one from I don't know if you knew this, Secrona, but there are some actual role-playing games that you guys play that are actually based on our universe. One in particular is called Rogue Trader.
Another's called Dark Heresy. There's also one that's actually you get to play as one of the superhuman Marines called Death Watch.
Mm.
The guy that is coming on in a couple of weeks that's going to be guest starring with us, Yuksen, he played that one. He played as a Space Wolf librarian, which we now know is called a Rune Priest.
Yeah.
Ha!
Well done, you remember.
Yes. I mean, that was only, 2 weeks ago?
I know, but...
Sorry, we're getting far afield here, Secrona. So Flint, anyways, is this barbarian dude. What's his character personalities that makes him different from Mitzi?
Well, first off, he unlike Mitzi, who just likes stealing things, Flint is just straight up. What kind of language can I use here? I have curiosity. Don't want to impose on your Vox.
Oh, we keep it pretty clean. There's
okay. Is 100% a jerk. He's a thief, but in the sense of
So what you're saying, we go from prick to jerk. Is the next character that you're going to come out with going to be just a
douchebag?
Probably. Just following the train of thought. Yes, probably. But no, again, I guess when you it's the same story essentially, thief, but in a post-apocalyptic world. This is supposed to be in the year 2098, so think essentially, for anyone who's seen it, Mad Max, the Road Warrior.
Gotcha.
But essentially, picture a very angry Texan.
Of course, Yuksen, the analytical one. Which one? I think he means all of them. They're Yuksen. They all kind of follow the same pattern. Of course, the best, obviously, was Thunderdome. But
yeah,
2 men enter, 1 man leaves. So, did you have any other favorite characters that you played?
I had one other one, which I played for actually quite a couple years actually. And this one was a 5e character. His name was James Hetfield. He was a bard halfling.
If I recall right, that was your second character of that. Okay, so for those that don't know anyways, I actually DM'd this one. And Yuksen also played with us. And this was last time we were on vacation.
Yeah. Well, the second to last time.
Yes, the second to last time, which I'm sure we'll get to talking about that in a bit. But right now, I'm going to focus on what you were mentioning. Yes, James Hetfield was essentially the second character I made for this campaign. That's because the first character, Ifrit Hetfield, died within the first combat against a bunch of bandits.
Yeah, that might have been my bad.
I think it took like 2 hits.
Yeah.
Or maybe one.
Yeah, level 1 bards shouldn't necessarily run into combat or be thrown into a situation where they're in combat.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand anyways the combat analytics at the time. So I threw you into a challenge level, probably level 5. You guys were both level 1s. Actually,
I mean, the monk was fine. It was the halfling that didn't stand a chance.
And if I recall right, this guy wasn't a douchebag like your other characters.
No, he was actually a fairly nice character. He wasn't like the most lawful good character, but he was fairly nice. Did things to help people out. Ended up being the leader of the ragtag group of would eventually become ragtag group of 3.
Right. Well, actually, there was more than 3, wasn't there? You also had some NPCs.
There was a 4th one. That's right. There is 4 characters that ended up playing.
You had, I think, at one point you had a couple people that joined up that were also NPCs, but they only were there for, I think, a month or 2.
I think so. I don't actually recall that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think William Wallace and
the Spartan guy.
Spartan.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, that's right. We did have that Spartan.
Oh, and then you did have a Falk, but he died. All right. He was one of the guys that you guys are supposed to control, and he died.
Yep.
Rather quickly.
Yep.
As opposed to the other guy that I think you continually controlled, right?
Yes, there was a character I controlled that was actually based off of a race that you made up for this world, which is a Nushaka, aka Shark People.
Yep. I actually picked this realm anyways from a different realm that Yuksen you would know, but Secrona probably not, known as Asheraka. That's one of the races that lives there, along with the Falk, which is part of the Mahi, which is a race of how should I describe them?
Lizard people.
Yeah. Or dinosaur people.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry, carry on there, Secrona.
The NPC that I controlled was for people who know a lot about recent internet history. Named is Leroy Jenkins, and he was the only multi-class character I ever got to control. He was actually classed. He was main class was barbarian, but he was also a fighter and a ranger.
Yeah,
and he's essentially he kind of acted as the muscle, which picked up the slack for my bard.
Now, if I recall right, though, your bard was pretty cool.
Bard did have some pretty nice abilities that every once in a while I got to show off, which was pretty cool. He got a magical guitar and a magical box, aka an amplifier, that went with it, and was able to cast many awesome spells. The unfortunate problem is later on, when more people started getting added and the difficulty got harder, he ended up doing more healing than anything else. But there was a sweet point where, like, in the middle of the beginning and the end, that middle section where he actually got to do some really cool stuff, and it was awesome using his spells. I was fairly new still to playing role-playing games at the time, so I didn't get to utilize his skills as much as I'd like to. A lot of spells, a lot of racial traits that I didn't utilize that I probably should have. And I feel like if I'd gone back and played him now, I'd probably be able to utilize him a lot better. But I still had fun with him. He's still probably... I still have fond memories of that character.
You're talking about a lot of cool spells. What was your favorite spell of his?
Probably one called Release the Kraken.
I figured that would be it.
Where before people ask, yes, you can release a Kraken, and I've managed to use the spell like 5 times. I summoned a dragon turtle twice, a water elemental once, and somehow, based off the ruling that I got to use, this is a made up spell, by the way, this is homebrewed, that I rolled a critical twice. So I summoned 2 times a Kraken.
I still don't know how you did that.
I don't know either. Like, the math doesn't add up, but it was hilarious seeing a Kraken come out and foil everything. It was awesome. I loved it. So,
a lot of what we've been talking about is, I mean, they're obviously your favorite characters and the characters that you enjoyed playing. But a good question to ask, anyways, is what makes a good character? I mean, for you, anyways, it seems like you tend to like to run a character, anyways, that's more of a fantasy. Your fantasy apparently is being a jerk.
It's a change of pace. That's all. It's like, I like, don't get me wrong, I usually enjoy being really nice to people, and it's one of the nice things. I like putting a smile on people's faces in real life. But sometimes you just want to change a pace. And if you're playing a fantasy game, why not just go all out and play something that you're not used to being? So, it's kind of a good counterpoint to, like, again, if I'm really nice to people and really care for people in real life, why not just do something completely different and throw a wrench into the mix of things and do something that I'm not used to doing?
Sounds to me like you'd actually really enjoy playing a evil campaign.
Probably, actually. I thought that character Flint, it's not really an evil campaign, but it's not a campaign in the sense where we're the good guys. We're definitely just bad guys. We're just not the worst bad guys out there.
Now, on the other hand, anyways, Yuksen, I know you like to keep it a little bit more closer, anyways, and personal. So your character is significantly more analytical. It likes thumping people. And knowing all like the intricacies and rules of your character, right?
Yeah. When I first started, I still didn't have a grasp of everything. But one of the things that I like to do when it comes to playing games like role-playing games is I like to study different factors, figure out, okay, in comparison to, for example, Secrona, who likes doing the aspect of the role-playing. I'm more of a structured person, focusing more on the tactical stuff. So that's why generally
Right.
my character would be more personal, more internal, and just basically throw out what I think, but not like go into great detail or so be sort of like, well, I believe this would probably be the better choice, but it's up to you guys. I mean,
Right.
the person who kind of pokes you with the stick is like, maybe, just saying. But I'm gonna be quiet over here in the corner
Okay.
until we get into a fight, and then I want to thump people.
Just out of curiosity for both of you guys, what are your guys' favorite class?
Rogue was a pretty fun one, but I like overly stupid strategies, so probably Barbarian.
That is actually my personal favorite. Simple, straight to the point.
Although Paladin is also pretty fun, especially in 5e, where essentially you don't get. We don't call them spell slots for Paladins. We call them smite slots for a reason. Because you almost never. Traditionally, you rarely use them during combat for spells. You use them because you want to thump things really, really hard with holy powers embedded into your weapon.
Aren't also paladins like ultimately designed to be like the ultimate tank? They just kind of suck up damage.
They're supposed to be, yeah. So essentially, I tank hits, and then I can use my magic to thunk you really hard by the power of my deity.
Right. Oh, what about you, Yuksen? What's your favorite?
Well, I also prefer more of the simpler people, and I do like barbarians, but I still think I favor monks not just because they're somewhat simpler. I just like the aspect of being able to beat the snot out of somebody with their bare hands, along with being able to, one of the branches actually be able to cast a fireball with actually not using up stuff.
Key.
Yeah, just key. Use your key to beat everything.
Well, not only that, but I mean, monks, when they get up to higher levels, are just ridiculous. I mean, you can move like all the way across the map. You can, in one move, you could hit somebody like 18 times. Didn't you by the end of that campaign? Didn't your guy not use hand-to-hand combat? He actually had a staff. But he had an ironwood staff.
No, originally I was using an ironwood staff, and then towards the end I ended up getting these. Well, they were homebrew, but they were gauntlets that allowed me to use hand-to-hand combat with a plus something bonus to them.
Ah, right. Before we move on, real quick, what do you guys think about multi-classing?
Honestly, multi-classing can be fun, but only once you've gone to a high enough level. Like, a great example is that one multi-class character that I got to play, which the NPC essentially that I got to use during combat, which was mostly barbarian, but also had a lot of fighter in his multi-class, and then a little bit of ranger. Mm-hmm. Once you're high enough level and you can utilize some of the higher level skills, it could actually be pretty fun. But if you're doing a lower campaign where you're starting at level 10 or lower, it could be, maybe you can get away with only 2 different classes, but once you get lower than level 10, it starts becoming really challenging to justify doing it. I personally believe. Then again, I'm not an expert on this, so I've only multi-classed once, and maybe there's people out there who can get more out of it than I can, but me tiny brain, me want to hit things hard.
At least in my opinion, first of all, multi-classing is obviously something you don't want to do when you first start out. I find through what I've looked into and when I've seen videos, generally if you're multi-classing, you do not want to split 50-50, because then you lose out on a lot of skills on one class or the other.
Right. Well,
Do you want
no,
to focus more on one and then have like a little bit in something else?
right. And if I recall right, Leroy, when he started, you guys were already at that point, what, level 13 or 14? So we just made him that level.
Yeah,
So you didn't have to worry about building those classes and trying to level them out or keep them at a point anyways where it was it worked. We just were able to just kind of chink it in. We looked at how far each level was, and we're like, oh well, that'll actually be kind of cool if we just plug both of these in, and that's what we did.
Yeah. So again, we started at level. He started at level 13, I think. That's what we got to do. So it was really easy to just go, okay, well, most of it's going to be barbarian, and then oh well, we got enough levels that we could plug in this amount, and he is a fighter, and then oh well, he does do a lot of hunting, and we can put a couple levels of ranger in there. So
Yeah, I also think it kind of helped that we already knew. I mean, when I had you guys actually help me build him, and we knew that we wanted somebody, anyways, with like this tracking skill. We wanted, we knew what his personality was going to be, which really I think helped build his class, his multi-class.
Right. Yeah.
Me personally, I only have a couple favorite characters. Normally when I end up playing D&D, I end up being stuck as the DM, which is fine. It's entertaining in and of itself. But the one character that I really enjoyed playing, his name was Kojar Hellbringer. Took the name from Ashraka. Probably one of the most famous cons of all time, anyways, of the orcs. And my guy was a orc barbarian. His war cry was simply murder, and every time that he gained a level, he actually grew in size. So by the time he was done, anyways, he was almost 7 feet tall and weighed like 375 pounds, and he was just this solid hulking beast. By the way, Yuksen, I took that concept, anyways, that he keeps growing the more he starts leveling up from the orcs that we know from Warhammer 40K. The more people they kill, the bigger they get. And I was like, yes, that makes sense. My guy also had a murder count, so every person that he killed, he got an extra tally on his murder count. He kept a record. He was the bruiser of the group. He literally, that was his whole reasoning for being there, anyways, was just to pretty much drink and kill people. That was his job. At one point, I did pick up a boar to carry his 2 kegs of beer around for him, but they got attacked by a group of We got attacked by a group of Allosauruses, and the boar ran away. We never saw him again. It was hinted at that a black dragon ended up eating him in a swamp, but my other favorite character wasn't mine. It was actually one of the guys that we played with in that campaign that I made for you guys. And his name was simply Gary. He was a tiefling rogue. Yes, he was a tiefling rogue. And we had a new player that wanted to play, never played D&D before. He wanted to be a rogue assassin. And for those who haven't played D&D, starting as a rogue assassin, probably not the greatest way to start. Honestly, if you're going to start D&D, probably you want to pick something that you want to pick a fighter. Honestly, that's probably the easiest one to pick. Fighter or barbarian, maybe a paladin if you're feeling snazzy, but or ranger. Actually, rangers are pretty simple too. But you want to pick something that's significantly simpler. Now, rogue can be simple. It's just the role-playing aspect of it is difficult. I mean, you agree with me? Do you guys agree with me there? Or?
Yeah. Like, once you've gotten used to role-playing, it becomes a lot easier to play the rogue, and you can find a way to, incorporate yourself into the group without having to be all chummy, still carry your rogue traits. But when you're just starting out, just going, nope, I'm doing everything by myself, it starts becoming like, okay, well, how are we supposed to interact with you if you're just going to run off every single time?
Yeah, which is kind of what rogues like to do. Well, and honestly, the system is built that way for rogues. They're designed that way. They're designed to be scouts, sneaky. The problem is that if you go in as an assassin, you just kind of kill everything while you scout. So it makes it kind of difficult.
Until you get to something that you try to kill, and unfortunately, it's beefy.
Yeah. And at that point, you're so far ahead of everybody else, you don't get any help, and you normally just get squished. It's a Baylor. I can take it. No, you really can't. Trust me, you can't take it. Die, backstab. Now you're dead. But yeah, so we convinced him anyways that maybe he should change his character. So we had to find a way to off Gary, so to speak. And instead of offing him, what we ended up doing is that he ends up saving the group, but he gets transported to hell. It was hell, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And one of the 9 levels of it.
Yeah. Yeah. He was a tiefling, so technically he could get along there. But because the guy that he ends up saving was James, he ends up with this what was it? A telekinetic?
A rock. It was essentially a telekinetic rock.
It was a rock?
It was a rock.
That you happened to pick up?
No, it was given to me, I think. I can't remember why it was given to me, but someone gave it to me. It wasn't Gary. I remember that much, but somehow Gary was able to talk to me through the rock, and only me. I'm the only person who heard him.
And just watching James, anyways, just slowly go insane as this guy just randomly in the middle of episodes, all of a sudden, bloop. And that's how he started every conversation. Bloop. Hello, James. Oh, no, not again. And the thing that was great about it was at the very end, turns out anyways, Gary did not just do okay in hell. He exceeded in hell. He conquered hell and was planning on conquering the rest of Ashraka. And he ends up being the big baddie at the end of the day. And James took great pleasure in murdering him at the very end to save Ashraka. But
yeah, it was totally save Ashraka. Totally no other alternative motive at all.
As he sat there above his dead corpse, just wailing on him with your guitar. But yeah, he was probably one of my other favorite characters. Now, the same time, anyways, we do have to talk about what makes a bad character. We've talked about a lot of our favorite characters, but we also have to talk about what bad characters are. Now, I'm not talking about like evil characters. I'm talking about like characters that you just honestly, what really boils down to what a bad character is a character you don't like playing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So what? How would you describe that for you guys personally?
I just think that a bad character is, again, like you said, someone you don't like playing. Whether it's someone one aspect could be just you don't know how to role play them. So like you make this character like say a paladin of some sort, but you know like nothing about the deity that you're worshiping. So you're just like, I have no idea what to do. Or a character who's got, you know how to play them in the role play aspect, but they've got such awful stats that you can't really utilize any of their abilities that well.
You got any examples?
I do have a couple of examples, actually. Yes. One of them was an Ushaka called Lucian. He was a paladin, and he had fairly all right stats, except for he was dumb as a rock.
Didn't help.
And so, like, every aspect, I somehow kept getting convinced to roll intelligence rolls. I don't know how. It's like, as soon as Zeckthar found out that I was playing a low intelligence character, whether he was intending to do this or not, he was just like, intelligence rolls. Lots of
wasn't, by the way. It just happened to be that everything that you were wondering anyways had to do with intelligence. So it was like, okay, roll for intelligence. And you're like, crap. Every time.
Well, time to use my minus 3 intelligence. Here we go.
Every once in a while, I'd just take pity on you and throw in a wisdom check. Like, oh, good. This is just a straight up roll.
I think my wisdom actually was a +1, so it was
okay.
oh yes, thank you.
Yeah. So that goes back to anyways to building your character. Make sure that you're plugging in things anyways where you want to plug them in, like your pluses for your dice roll. The guy I honestly hated playing was Artemis Intrury. Okay, for those of you who don't know who Artemis Intrury is, he's based off of a character done by R.A. Salvatore. He's a human assassin, and the group that I was playing with, they wanted me to be a rogue assassin. So I'm like, okay, I'll just use this guy as a template. The problem is that I've read a lot of his books, and he's a great character, but he doesn't play well with others. So with the role-playing aspect of it, I didn't really do well with the other people in the group because he just kind of, he's a fighter, assassin, rogue, which means that he can pretty much, by the time we got to like level 12, he could kind of take on everybody all by himself. So he was just not very fun to play. There was no aspect of moving along with the rest of the group. I just didn't really like playing him. And then I got bored playing with him, and then it just didn't work. Which is interesting, why I find it interesting, Secrona, that you actually enjoy playing rogues. How do you actually deal well with the rest of the party as a rogue? To me, it was just kind of didn't make any sense.
Well, in the way, how do I describe it? Well, first off, the original reason why I made the rogue in the first place is because it paired well with the other rogue, and so we could bounce each other off of each other's skill sets. But really, it's because the players that I was playing with were kind of just guys who kind of playing chaotic neutral characters as well, and so it was more along the lines of I could play well with the chaotic neutral aspect of it, and then when it actually came to combat, I could take advantage of the fact that they would go into combat with people and get behind whoever was that was fighting and attack them as well. So it was along the lines of being able to work with getting the best way of getting my skills off was in fact working with others, and that's how I built my character in the first place. So if you could build your rogue so that not only does it work by itself, but it works exceptionally well with other people, you can actually pull off a rogue pretty well without getting too bored.
Okay, before we move on to you, Yuksen, and your favorite character, because you really only have one. Did you have any other characters that you didn't like playing there, Secrona?
I did, and yet again, it's another. Well, they're called a champion, and this is a Pathfinder character, so it's a champion. Think of it as a different flavor of paladin. This one was called a liberator. This was a liberator. He was a dwarf named Morgrim. And the problem with running champions is essentially, again, all three of the different champions, paladin being one of them, are all based off of your main skill slot is your charisma. They're charisma casters. And unfortunately, when you're a dwarf, you automatically start with a minus in your charisma. So you have to use some of your extra skill points to put it into your charisma. And so,
just out of curiosity, why do you get a -1 for charisma if you're a dwarf?
I guess it's just stereotypical dwarves generally don't get along with other people.
Okay.
I guess.
I always liked dwarves.
Profiling!
It
sounds like racial profiling here.
I mean, it is.
I thought you people on Terran 42 didn't like that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, apparently fantasy games are completely different rules. I guess race profile as much as you want in a fantasy game.
Well, okay, don't worry. In our realm, anyways, if you're not human, then you're worse than filth. So
that makes me feel very happy that I'm not considered filth then where you're from. But yeah, the problem was Morgan was a fun character to roleplay, but I couldn't utilize a lot of his skills because, again, usually you would put your stats into charisma, strength, and dexterity. Those would be the main things that I would want to put it into, but I had to put more points into my charisma, which means my other points suffered, which means I really couldn't deal a lot of damage. Huh. And a lot of us, unfortunately, the Liberator, unlike the Paladin, gets really crappy spells and abilities. So I was practically useless. I was just my only benefit was I had a high dexterity and high armor, so I was almost impossible to hit, but it didn't matter because I couldn't hit anything else.
We had a guy that when I played as Kojar, we had a paladin that had the same problem, but that was just because he rolled terribly. He couldn't hit anything to save his soul. But the thing was, is I think he had like his armor was up to like 32. So, I mean, he was a walking tank, and no one could kill him. I mean, he would just keep wailing on this armor, and he'd be just like, "Oh, that tickles," kind of thing. And then he tried to hit somebody, and he couldn't hit anybody.
I
like,
wish I had
roll, and I got a 5. Does that hit? No, not even close. So,
I wish I had that problem. No, it was like I could roll really well, and it's like, well, no, you still didn't match the AC. Sorry, that +1 strength's not going to help you. It's like, well, cool, thank you, appreciate it.
if I recall right, you were also running Lucian at the same time as Morgan, weren't you?
No, actually, I think this was shortly after I ended up stopped playing Lucian.
Oh, okay. So he went from one bad character to the next.
And again, they both happen to be essentially
paladins.
Paladins. Or one of the equivalents to a paladin in one of the games. But yes.
Maybe you should stay away from paladins.
See, now I'm stubborn. Maybe I'll go and try to make another paladin after this at some point, just to be like, no, I can do it.
I will make this work. Well,
I run in the wall enough times, it'll break.
Eventually.
Just keep using your head.
Brick by brick, I'll break down this wall. I'll see the light someday.
Yuksen, I'm pretty sure you've only played a couple of these games, but I think you actually like both of your characters, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, the first character that I played was his name was Scabbin the Scarred, and he was a half-orc. He was also a monk. And so
which I recall right, with the benefits of a half-orc, once you get up there as a monk, it's not really fair.
If you can roll well.
Yeah, you're also bad.
The disadvantage, well, other than not being able to roll very well in my case, was that when I first started out, really, it'd be smarter if they adjusted the rules for D&D, because when we first started out as a monk, you can't do anything. Really, pretty much. You're just like, yay, key points do stuff. How many do you have? Like 2. So you can do stuff twice.
I think they do that because once you get into higher levels, monks are kind of unstoppable.
Not necessarily.
Okay, really? Okay, Secrona, help me out here. Monks, once you get to like level 14, they're kind of indestructible, aren't they? And they kind of kill everything.
Well, I wouldn't go quite that far. Simply the fact that one of the reasons that he got carried was because of a home-brewed item, which always just gave his opponents disadvantage. That eventually had to be taken away because it was so powerful. But once you get to higher levels...
What was that? I don't remember that.
It was a cloak.
It was the cloak of displacement, and you read the information wrong.
Oh, yeah.
Originally, it's supposed to be if you get hit, okay, they no longer have disadvantage. But either you didn't see that, or I didn't see that, or both of us. So it's like, oh yeah, every single time you try, no matter how many times you actually hit him.
Right. So it wasn't actually homebrew. It was just that we read the information wrong.
I mean, it was at that point it became homebrew.
True. But we did correct it, didn't we?
No, it never got corrected. Eventually, you guys were just like, well, somehow we got to get rid of this item because it's too good. I can't remember the exact reasoning why, but there's something that happened that ended up something that was not done. Something that happened during the campaign. I won't get into it, but eventually
you
it's
ended
like,
up trading it, right?
Yeah, he traded it
for I think like a gem of the halfling or something like that.
Yeah, so that when I roll a 1, I could re-roll it because, like I said, one of the problems I had was I couldn't roll worth anything.
Unless it really counted. Anyways, sorry, go ahead.
The second character that I had, probably would have enjoyed him more if, in that case, the game ended kind of shortly just because everything sort of fizzled out. I did enjoy playing him, though. He was a barbarian wood elf, which I rolled really well for his stats. So he was this skinny guy, but he was built like out of iron, basically.
He was skinny, mighty.
Yes. So he had like a +5 on his strength, and he ended up having like an armor class of 21, which is ridiculous. It's like, and yes, I am intelligent, not so much on not necessarily so much on intelligence, but pretty much everything else. It was like almost a 20 or something like that. So he was ridiculous in the power department. But due to certain things that happened through the game that I kind of caused with my character, it kind of just ended up fizzling out.
So before we move on, anyways, to our next question for you, Secrona, on that campaign, one of the things that really stands out to me that I really liked is we are actually playing with two new people. And I don't even remember how it happened, but it was one of them was trying to convince this group of hobgoblins, I think it was, that he was like by himself or something like that. And the other new guy tried to sneak up into a bush and the bush started moving and the hobgoblin's like, what was that? He's like, oh, that's nothing. And then he hucked the spear at it and he was trying to miss and he didn't. You guys remember how that ran?
I think he ended up hitting one of the other new players as well with that. It's like also it's nothing. See? Shink. Actually, it might have been me. He might have actually hit me instead.
Yeah, I think it was Secrona that got hit. It was like, really?
I was like, ah.
So like every time,
and being a paladin with massive amount of armor, it was a pretty ridiculous throw.
It was pretty damn powerful. Like it was. I think he rolled like a 19 on his dice.
Yeah.
And then a +3 on his strength modifier. So I was like, well, yeah, no, that definitely hits.
And then I don't think it actually did some decent damage too. You're just like, really?
I think it took like half my life at the time. I mean, level 1 or not, it still did massive damage. It's like,
Great. Well, we're getting close to the end of this. Before we take off, though, we do have to move into, anyways, when do you know, anyways, it's time to move on from your character? So, like, for instance, we've had a good fun talking about, especially James Hetfield, and that campaign that had Scabin in it as well, and Leroy Jenkins. And if I recall right, that campaign lasted, what, 2 years? 3 years?
2 to 2.5. Somewhere between there. I think it was around 2.5.
And it just gets to the point, anyways, where, you know, you kind of want to move on, which is fine. I mean, by the way, most D&D campaigns, as far as I know, anyways, they don't normally last a year, do they?
Well, again, one of my last Pathfinder campaigns actually lasted a good year or two. But generally, if you try to run your sessions shorter, you don't want to run them too long unless you are with a group of people that you know are going to be consistent with it.
Right.
But usually they don't last around that long. Then again, I have no room to talk. There's been a campaign apparently out there somewhere in the States where that's lasted over 30 years.
Oh, yeah. You're talking about Critical Role?
No, I'm not talking about, that's not 30 years.
No. Critical Role's they've been around for a while, though, too, haven't they?
Their first campaign was around 3.5 years, I think. And then, it kind of just sort of took off.
I thought it was older than that. Okay, 3.5 years ago, that would be in Terran
No,
Standard.
no,
Units.
three
That'd
and
be-
a half years was how long their first campaign was, around there, from
Oh,
what
but-
I remember being
But they
told.
still use the same characters, don't they?
No, they swapped their characters around.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it is the same group of people, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
so
but
that's a good example of them knowing, anyways. It's like, okay, it's time to move on to a different character. In your personal experience, Secrona, when is it a good time to move on from your characters?
well, there could be many different reasons. Whether it's be the DM closes a story, or whether it's or not. If he's not closed a story, just essentially going, look, I've been playing this character for so long, and I've gone bored of playing this character, and think that I've gone out as much from this person that I'm playing as I can. Whether it be story-wise or ability-wise, again, just entertainment value-wise.
Right.
To the point where it's just like, you know, it
It's
starts
not-
becoming not, you don't want to get to the point where playing the character is a hassle. And that's
Right.
kind of where James Hetfield, for example, was starting to get to, where it started becoming, there was like no fun in playing James anymore. Because again, when playing with new players, that people were running in and people were getting hurt. And essentially I went from, oh, I'm able to do all these awesome things to heal.
If I recall right, you were kind of healing the same person over and over again. The newbie.
Yeah, mostly the newbie. It was mostly the newbie that was healing. It's like, oh, great. Or the NPCs that would rush in and it'd be like,
If I recall right, the newbie was actually controlling too.
Yep.
Well, I hate to say it, our time is up. Thank you, Secrona, for your wonderful stories and insights on developing characters.
My pleasure. Yet, before you go, might I make a pitch for my channel on YouTube?
But of course, I find your channel to be most interesting.
Indeed. So do I, Yuksen. It's an interesting channel that shows people how to run through entertaining video games.
And don't forget the skits.
Oh, quite right, Yuksen. How could I forget those funny skits about that silly game known as Pokemon?
Can I talk now?
My apologies, Secrona. Once again, I hate to say, but we do tend to droll on. Very well, give us your mighty pitch.
Well, for those of you who enjoy sketch comedy, gaming streams, and just loud noises in general, you will feel right at home on my channel. While I, as a former Zeckthar and Yuksen here, you might at least get some good laughs. Just go to youtube.com/SECRONA. And until next time, rock on!
Well, there you have it.
Yep, that's how a professional does it, Zeckthar. Once again, thank you, Secrona, for coming on our Vox. It was much appreciated.
Yes, indeed. Until next time.
Do you mind if I join in?
Not at all. Shall I start this again?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Until next time, this is Zeckthar.
Secrona.
And Yuksen, signing off.